we're going to move away from conics and we're going to look at piecewise functions. What a piecewise function is it's a function that has more than one equation. How we're going to distinguish where each equation is based off of our domain. So after the equation, what we have is a domain. So this part of the equation is on the left-hand side because it's everything less than x. This one right here is everything on the right-hand side. So in each one of these cases, what we have are two different functions, and we're going to be graphing them on the same coordinate system. So when we're looking at our first one, what we're going to do is we're always going to start with our domain. Whatever our domain is, that right there is our starting point. So with our first one, our starting point is 1. So what I'm going to do is I am going to plug in a 1 into the equation. 1 minus 3 gives me a negative 2. So I'm starting at 1, negative 2. Now, notice that it's less than, not less than or equal to. Notice I filled it in, but that was a mistake. It should be an open circle because we're not including the 1. We're going to include the 1 on the second equation. Now, we're starting at 1, negative 2. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the left. So a point to the left of 1 would be 0. And so we're going to plug a 0 into the x. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So that means that it starts at 1, negative 2, and it goes to 0, negative 3. Since it's a linear equation, it's going to be a straight line going in that same direction. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our second equation. Notice that we're starting with a 1. If I plug a 1 into this equation, it's going to be 2. Now you may be saying, why is it 2? Well, it's always 2. Notice that there's no x's. No matter what number we pick, it's always going to be 2. We're going to start at 1, 2. I'm going to put a big giant circle filled in. That's the starting point. I'm going to go to the right. To the right of 1, notice it's greater than or equal to 1 would be 2. So I take the 2 and plug it in, and as you probably guessed, it's still the same. It's 2. So 2, 2. It's going towards that point. It's also a linear equation, so I make a straight line. And that's my graph. Now, if we look at letter B, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to start at negative 2. I'm going to take the negative 2 and I'm going to plug it in. 2 minus a negative 2 is 4. That's my starting. So I'm going to plot my negative 2, 4. I notice that it's a closed circle. So negative 2, 4, I have a giant closed circle. That's my starting point. Notice it's greater than, so that means my next point is going to be greater than negative 2. I'm going to pick negative 1, but I just have to pick one point. So I could pick 0 or something greater than negative 2. I'm going to take the negative 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it in. 2 minus a negative 1 is 3. So at negative 1 and 3, I have my next point. Once again, it's a linear equation, so it's making a straight line. That's the first part of my piecewise function. Now I'm going to look at my second part. Once again, it starts at negative 2. So my first point is going to be at negative 2. I'm going to plug in the negative 2 into this equation. This is pretty easy because it's always the same. Then, since it's less than negative 2, I am going to pick a point less than negative 2, so like negative 3. When I plug in the negative 3, it becomes negative 3. So I'm starting at negative 2, negative 2. Notice it's an open circle. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to negative 3, negative 3. And since it's a linear equation, I'm going to draw a straight line in that direction. Let's look at letter C. Now with the letter C, our domain is going to start at 0. So that means that my first point is going to be 0. I'm going to plug in a 0. Half of 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So that right there is my starting point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point that's greater than 0. Now I'm not going to pick 1 because then I'm going to end up with a fraction. And I want to make it as easy as possible for myself. So I'm going to pick 2 because I know that half of 2 is 1. And that gives me a whole number. Half of 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So when I plug in 2, I get 2. I start at 0, 1, which is an open circle because there's no line underneath. Then I go to 2, 2, and I plot a point, and I go in that direction. Now, if I'm looking at my second equation, this is a little bit different than the last 5. Notice that we have a quadratic. We know that it's positive, so we know that we're going to have some graph going up like this. I am going to graph this the same as the other ones. I'm going to start at 0. I plug in the 0. 0 squared is 0, minus 1 is negative 1. So at 0, negative 1, I have a closed circle. Once again, the reason that it's a closed circle is because there's a line underneath. It's less than, so less than 0 would be negative 1. So now I'm going to plug in a negative 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have negative 1 and 0. Since this is not a linear equation, I'm going to pick another point because this is not going to make a straight line. So I'm going to pick negative 2 because it's to the left. So negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So negative 2, 3. So I have negative 2. I go up 3. And what I have is half of a parabola. And that right there would be my piecewise function.